Good evening and welcome on this online A+ lecture. Tonight we are welcoming Mikko Summanen of the Finnish office K2S Architects. The work of K2S Architects is characterized by the research for simple spaces and pure geometrical forms. And the Japanese architect Toyo Ito called their work a warm humanistic modernism and close to the traditional Finnish architecture. We will hear Mikko Summanen about this later on, but first I would like to tell you that this is a co-production between A+ Architecture in Belgium and the Finnish Cultural Institute for the Benelux, whose aim it is to foster a cultural collaboration between Finland and the countries of the Benelux. This lecture is also made possible thanks to the support of the Flemish government, of the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, the Brussels Capital Region and the City of Brussels. We would also like to thank Galerie Dito for the furniture. But now I would like to give the floor to Mikko Summanen. Thank you very much. Mikko.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation. We really do appreciate for this occasion, and I would like to extend my thanks both to the Belgian and the Finnish parties behind organizing the event. I myself am one of three partners in the office K2S Architects. Two other partners, Kimmo Lintula and Niko Sirola, are my very close friends from almost 30 years now. So I would say that our practice is pretty much built around this close and long time friendship. Today I have chosen to talk to you about two different buildings. Both of them are sacral buildings. And why this? Because we feel that in sacral buildings, an architect has perhaps the greatest freedom and the greatest possibility to build bridges between past and future, to build bridges between intellect and emotion, and perhaps the greatest opportunity to produce a wholesome architectonic piece of art, which might be called Gesamtkunstwerk. I will share my screen with you now. First of all, a few words about our office. We are a team of 14 at the moment. Our portfolio extends from small object and furniture design into large-scale urban planning, as well as large public buildings, such as this one, which is the refurbishment and extension of Helsinki Olympic Stadium, which was just recently completed. By far the longest and most challenging project in our career, beginning already 2003 and being completed 2020. Architecture certainly is a discipline for the patient, and it takes time for things to polish and become diamonds, if you will. Helsinki Olympic Stadium, originally built for 1940 Olympics, which never took place because of the Second World War. The Olympics were held 1952 in Helsinki, and now we are with this continuing the narrative, and I would say fighting against the current trend of sports and Olympic architecture, which is only used once and then doesn't have a very long life cycle. We think architecture should be something very different. In the opening words, you referred to our monography, Beyond the Wall of Sound, which was published a couple of years ago. The opening words to that book were written by Toyo Ito, the well-known Japanese architect and Pritzker laureate as well. And we do feel honored that he would describe our architecture as traditional, warm Finnish humanistic modernism, since we do feel that our architecture is rooted in the Finnish tradition, but it's also rooted in the future and innovation, as well as intellect and emotion. Now, these are, let's say, the four paths that we try to follow in all of our building projects and architecture. I will begin with a small chapel downtown Helsinki in a place called KAMPPI, which was completed 2012. In perhaps one of the most busy locations in the heart of the city. A challenge for us here was to create an important sacral building in a large commercial environment, and still create a strong enough identity for the building to stand out in this part of the city. The philosophy behind the architecture grows from both inside the building as well as from outside the building. First of all, we made a decisive choice to separate the program of the building into two. There's first the wooden volume, which houses only the sacral space itself, the chapel itself. And then there's a secondary architecture, which houses everything else. You enter through that secondary architecture, and all auxiliary functions are placed in that. In all, we feel that the transitional spaces, especially for sacral buildings, are very important and essential. And the relationship of the exterior, interior, and what is in between is of essence. As I said, we started to mold the architecture here, both from the outside, from the urban condition, as well as the interior. To begin with, the urban condition here, we thought that the flux of people, the movement of the city, as well as the views on the site, should somehow give reason and somehow mold the geometry. So we started to form this kind of an island, a safe haven within the flux of the city. And at the same time, we talked about the importance of the atmosphere in the interior of the chapel. In this busy part of the city, we felt it's important to enclose and limit senses from busy urban life. So when you're inside the chapel, you don't see the city, and you don't hear the city. There's only the atmosphere of the architecture. This site plan shows you how the sacral volume is clearly distinctive from the orthogonal and horizontal secondary architecture, through which you enter from different directions, two different directions, from the direction of the main railway station in Helsinki, as well as the main bus hub and commercial centers in the western direction. Once you enter, you come to the foyer. space, which is a low space. It's of concrete, cast offside concrete, glass and steel, and you still experience the surrounding urban context. But you're already in the transitional space. And to enter the sacral space, you go through this very thick wooden wall, and you experience the organic geometry and sense of materiality already when going through this thick wooden wall. And then you are surrounded by the sacral. We talked very much about the atmosphere of the sacral. What kind of qualities should it have? And we talked about human scale monumentalism, and that is kind of an attempt to create something uplifting and holy, but at the same time for the human scale and size of a human being. Also the materiality, the warmth of the wood, warmth of common alder, which is a local wood used in the interior finishings, was of essence. But perhaps the most important was the geometry and light. There's an indirect top light surrounding the whole sacral space, which gives a rather small amount of light. Because we talked about the atmospheres and feelings in traditional Finnish and Nordic chapels and churches, and in many of those, the amount of light is quite limited, and that is part of the holy atmosphere. And we felt by this decision we will tie our contemporary architecture to the roots of sacral buildings in the Nordic. In all our cases, we study the architecture carefully with different tools, such as this urban scale modeling, as well as larger scale models. This, for instance, is 1:50 model, which is built of airplane plywood. And let me explain you why I think it's important to use different tools. For a very long time, we didn't really know how to sensibly construct this double curved wooden facade and surfaces. So we, by using different tools, computer modeling, furniture, traditional furniture design and construction methods, shipbuilding methods, as well as this modeling methods. This is the way we found out how to make the interior of the chapel itself. Actually, very similar method of layering CNC milled wooden layers was used in the model as well as in the final one-to-one bowl of wood, which you can see here in the section. The inner part of the chapel is made of this CNC milled layers of common alder, and the exterior of horizontal layers of laminated local spruce. The bearing frame of the building is as well of wood. By using 3D modeling, we found out the methods of sensible construction, as well as through one-to-one mock-ups, trying to find the right species of wood, trying to find the right techniques for both the exterior and the interior, and resulting with this outer cladding as I said, of spruce, local spruce. All of the wood for the building became from 200-kilometer radius of the building site, which is of course a sustainable issue. It's resource-wise, and it ties the building to local traditions as well. The outer finishing was treated with a bio-wax, especially developed product for this case, a product which uses nanotechnology in the application and allows the wax to penetrate the wood deeper and give it better protection for weather and sunlight and moisture. Once entering the building, you encounter this very minimal world of cast on-site concrete, glass, steel, and very carefully designed and selected objects of wood as this bench of larch. You enter through this thick wall of wood into the sacral space. Selection of the species of wood was here also very important to us. Common alder is a species where the heart of the wood is dark and the surface of the wood is light, and that would allow us to give more contrast to the texture of the wood, which enhances the feeling of the geometry and the properties and texture of the wooden surface. The interior wooden surface is basically one freestanding ball of wood or concrete foundation. And this is, of course, technically quite important, so that when the wood lives with moisture and heat, it doesn't crack. So it's a living object in a sense. The atmosphere in the chapel, it does change quite dramatically according to the time of the year and the time of the day, when the circulation of sun and amount of light change the atmosphere in the interior. I talked earlier about the idea of Gesamtkunstwerk, and in this case we were able to design all objects, including the furniture, sacral objects, as this silver cross and the silvered bowl for baptizing, as well as chandeliers for certain ceremonies and other Christian symbolism. This building is unique in the sense that it's ecumenical. It's open for all religions, even if it's a Christian chapel. For us, it was important to choose as equal and democratic symbol from the Christian symbols, which is the Greek cross with similar length, 4 ends of the cross, and it is it's proven to be a very important place for the citizens of Helsinki for meditation. Not only Christian meditation, but all kinds of contemplation, and also certainly for visitors in Helsinki. Since it's proven to be so popular, we are at the moment designing an extension to the chapel, which you can see here in the site plan, a small triangle which will house 3 new meeting spaces for discussions and meetings. But we are trying to do it in a way that one doesn't understand that there is a change in architecture. This is the same photo I showed you in the beginning, and here on the right you can see the extension. We're not touching the sacral part itself, but dealing with the secondary architecture, which I was talking about earlier. Another just very recently completed sacral building we designed lies in northern Finland in a small town called YLIVIESKA. It is a very unique project. It's for sure the most important building in this town. Northern Finland is very different from the big cities in the south. Religion still plays a much more significant role in people's life and everyday actions. So this is for sure the most important building in the city. This is the reason why there is now a new building of contemporary church architecture in YLIVIESKA. 5 years ago, a wooden traditional church from 18th century was burned down, and the community, right after the first shock, they launched an architectural competition for a new church. And this is an illustration from our winning entry for that competition. I earlier talked about the power of joining tradition and contemporary, past and future. And this is what our attempt in YLIVIESKA Church has as well been. We tried to find out certain forms and certain signals, certain commonness that people could see in traditional churches in the Nordic tradition, even to the medieval churches in Finland, but to do it in a way that one clearly distinguishes a contemporary piece of church architecture. We called our entry Trinitas, which means the three, the Holy Three, and that describes the approach, the architectonic approach here. We are fusing together three archaic volumes in architecture into something contemporary. As well as in the case of KAMPPI, the atmosphere, the human scale monumentalism was a driving motive for us in the most important sacral space here. Indirect top light and different strategies for top light from the roof and indirectly from behind the altar, as well as from the graveyard side. Transitional space is also very important in this case. One enters from the old churchyard through this foyer space, which is also a kind of semi-exterior. We are turning the facade materials from the exterior facades into the interior facades in order to create a transitional space of exterior fusing interior. And also here too, as well as in KAMPPI, we are playing with heights and proportion. One enters to the vertical main church hall through a very low space, which prepares one for the sacral. The main church hall is joined with a communion hall a children's space, a side altar, sacristy, and spaces for the bride and groom and so on, and small kitchen for events and some technical spaces. This is an image of almost completed building. This series of model images will show you how the spatial let's say skeleton or framework is built. One enters through this very horizontal opening towards the churchyard, comes to the rather vertical lobby, and enters through this low transitional space to the sacral space itself, which is really defined by the geometry and the light, the top light as well as the light, indirect natural light behind the altar. So you can see here, the sacristy is a very small and intimate space within these very thick walls of architecture. On the other side, on the eastern side, you can see small signs, small reminders of what used to be there. These are exactly the size and geometry of the openings of the 18th century church, which was burned on the adjacent side. And they are today housing the bells which fell down from the burning church. So we wanted to integrate these small pieces of memory, small pieces of the very long narrative of that community into the contemporary architecture as well. So there are let's say some of the signs are more easy to read and more obvious, and some of them are more abstract and perhaps unconscious. Now we're turning towards the entry again through the model sections. Behind the church hall is the space for organs and the choir, and then the smaller communion hall for events, and then back to the foyer and a long horizontal view towards the old church ruin and the churchyard. This is a very recent image. The church was inaugurated in Easter, the biggest fest in the church calendar. Unfortunately, for a very few guests only, due to this unusual time we're living. But the church is now there waiting for larger audiences and ceremonies to take part and take place in these new church halls. If the material world and the geometry is very abstract and minimal, the role of wooden surfaces is very important here. The ceilings on both sides are of local pine. The seats also designed by us, as well as all the furniture here is large, and the cross on the altar is constructed of some of the burned logs, the inside of the burned logs of the burned church. So again, a small piece of tradition, small piece of the long narrative brought to a new condition, given a new life in architecture. We are deliberately trying to build houses with a very long lifespan, with materials which will last, with materials with as low as possible carbon footprint. In this case, the calculation number for the lifespan of the building frame is 200 years. But of course, we believe that the building will live much longer than that. There's no extra insulation in the whole building. The walls are made of thick brick blocks and local brick on the facades. The ceiling is made of glulam wood, these large beams, and then CLT for the roof surface itself, and on the exterior again burnt brick, so that there's a very uniform materiality in the exterior, much reminiscent of medieval churches in the Nordic tradition. Which you can actually experience better here in the detailing. Very simple construction, and also this, we believe, is a sustainable way and a very resilient way to build. And coming back from the sacral spaces to the foyer, the transitional space where you take your coat off and prepare for perhaps even difficult ceremonies, but also joyous ceremonies in the church. The local brick here turns from the facades into the inner facade of the foyer. Everything else is very minimal and plain. The proportion and the scale of things is a constant path of exploration for us. This is the side altar, much like in let's say, especially in Catholic church architecture, there's a complete world of smaller scale architecture in the side altars. And this is something that we wanted to find out. How could that be translated into contemporary church architecture? Here, the side altar in the main church hall. It is fantastic to be able to take part in all scales of design, which is the case here in extending to the handles, furniture, and the Christian symbolical objects, such as the baptizing bowl, the stand that holds it, made of one large piece of wood, a bowl of brass finishing, and finally the cross, which is again Greek democratic, if you will, a cross with the slight variance of the theme Trinitas. There's the triangle which finds a new form, and there's the use of the material which was salvaged from the burning ruins of the old church. As I said, in our architecture, we are trying to create spaces which are important to people, which will have an impact on you, not only intellectually and physically, but also emotionally. And this is a very challenging and we feel a path of a lifelong learning for us, which we will definitely continue with passion, especially with my good friends Kimmo Lintula and Niko Sirola, but also with our great team of people in K2S architecture. This is my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm now here for your questions and further discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mikko Summanen, for this lecture and also for these two beautiful projects that really gives us a new feeling of wanting to go to Finland right away. So I have a first question for you. Since you showed two sacral buildings, and at the same time for the last 50 years, we have noticed in Europe a growing secularization of our environment, and but still we see and we seem to notice that people have really the need for quiet spaces, for silence, for space where you can go for prayer or meditation, just such as you said. And I'm wondering, since you addressed this program twice and maybe in other projects as well, is there a certain architecture that you could connect with the architecture of silence or of prayer? Is there what is your approach to this programmatic issue?
This is very true. In 2012, when the chapel in KAMPPI was erected, we really thought that this is one of the last churches in Finland, because of course we too are living in the same world of secular development. And of course, in the case of YLIVIESKA, it's also a rather unusual situation when an old traditional church was burned down, and there became the need for new church. So not too many new churches and chapels are being built in Finland. But at the same time, we do sense that there is a new kind of need for spirituality, and especially in the case of Helsinki and KAMPPI, we felt that it was important to offer people architecture which is where the symbolism and, let's say, perhaps some of the restricting elements of Christian tradition are subdued, so that there's more freedom for all kinds of people to be participating and to experience the possibilities of contemplation. But then again, for instance, in YLIVIESKA, it's a very different world. The religious community is very strong there, and in their case, Christian life is very vibrant. An architect is in a great position that we have the possibility to design and give people the settings of their lives, and one has to be able to adapt to all kinds of circumstances, all kinds of cultures, whether it's secular or whether it's specifically religious.
Yes, and thank you for this answer. And again, also to these two projects, I noticed that you mentioned the word Gesamtkunstwerk, and the idea of not only making a space but also making the experience of the space with all other instruments that you or other objects that you designed. And I was wondering, what is the role of craftsmanship in your office and in your work?
The role of craftsmanship is essential, definitely. We try to find out new ways of using traditional building materials, traditional furniture materials, traditional object materials, and re-innovate them again and again and again. And to do that, we have to be able to find the right people to work with. So we have a network of great people who are experts in wood, who are experts in metal, who are experts in brick, for instance. Even a brick can be reinvented again and again. In this case of YLIVIESKA, we did not customize the bricks, but we have several projects where we have really customized even bricks for certain buildings, and this is a kind of craftsmanship which is really close to our hearts. It is we feel that a good building is a combination of industrially produced materials and materials and objects where the craftsman's mark of hand can be experienced, and that the certain imperfection which comes from that human's hand is certainly a source of beauty for us.
Yeah, and you were talking also about the different materials that you are using a lot, and which are often also natural materials such as wood, and also the importance, as you mentioned, of the use of local wood. What is this a general approach in your work, or was it just for this one chapel that you worked with this way of working?
No, it is certainly a general approach. We, during this last very unusual pandemic period, we have used some of our time in the office in building a handbook of sustainable architecture and locally resourced materials with short transportation distances is certainly one aspect in creating buildings of low carbon footprint and also local, and also joining the local community into the buildings. We feel that, of course, sustainability is something that must be inbuilt in our architecture today, but also the psychological ownership which results from engaging the local producers, local craftsmen, local users in the design process already, and certainly the building phases. It is of great significance because through this participation, one feels that we are doing together versus something that is given from designers who come from Helsinki, the capital, to northern Finland and are telling how things are done. we would like to do things differently.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of finishing this very interesting lecture. I would like to thank you so much, Mikko Summanen, for all the beautiful project that you showed us, and I would like to thank also the audience for listening to us, and I hope we will see each other again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a true pleasure to be with you and to be given this chance to share our important, but for us important thoughts about architecture.